All right, you guys should be able to see me. You guys should be able to hear me. Make sure that my thing's not going to fall off of there. Okay, good. What are we working on today? If anybody wants to hang out with me, I'm going to finish building some stuff from last week. It's already done. I just have to write the book on it, and then I'm working on. I have Unit 4 partially finished. So if you guys are familiar, we're running a administration course. Well, so we've got different courses, but this is a automation course for Linux and systems engineering and security and all those things. So there's just a lot of pieces that we're kind of touching. We've got a Prolog lab environment. One of our guys put together the bot, and now the bot is designed to, you can just drop in your key and it will automatically put your key in our environment. And if you guys need to get into that environment, you can see how to do that in the Discord. So that's kind of fun. All right, so what am I doing? I'm going to go through and I'm going to write this portion of the lab that I didn't write yet. And wonderful. Apparently my mouse isn't going to work over here. But we're going to go ahead and get this going. Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing the mouse, but and then after we get that done, I'm going to go finish what I have of lab or our next portion. So we have, this is the discussion today that we're going to do. I have all the review part done. Obviously that stuff's already done. So we'll look at inventories again. We'll finish up Unit 3 and then we'll get into this week's stuff. So I've already updated this part and some of this new stuff that we're kind of adding in. So we'll get that going. I'll probably be working on that here. And whether I'm streaming or not, I'm going to be doing that. So I figured I'd just pop on and see who's on. Agent, how's it going? Yeah, let's see how this goes. So this is the lab. If anybody wants to do it with me, the lab's done. I just have to do like the write-up for it. So here's the lab. If any of you were here last night, some of you might have been here last night, and I was trying to get my Proxmox. I was trying to get that last thing done so that I could move over my data section in my home lab, and I got that thing done. And if anybody wants to know what that looked like, I always put stuff that I find later in our meeting notes. So this is what it was right here. Was I hadn't set the Samba password, so it was the Samba password -a Samba data. Once I did that, connected right over. So I got connected into my system pretty much as soon as I got off. So that was kind of annoying. So now, anyways, if I were to show you in my home lab, I am now, well, on my systems, any of my Windows systems now point to that data for all of our backup, as opposed to the other data, the old data location. Reason that's important is now I've shifted over to my newer server hardware, and the older stuff is that much closer to being decommissioned, which is kind of important. I have put together, so people that are doing the security and the automation course with us, the discussions are up. So here's the Unit 4 discussion for security. Talks about, we're building bastions, which are one of my favorite little topics. Bastions and bastion nodes and air gapping systems, and showing you guys how that kind of works. And then jailing users, understanding how we jail processes, how we jail users. If any of you have cell phones, that's how your cell phones work. Everything in there is jailed. No system can talk to any other system without you explicitly giving it permission. And then we've got our automation questions, which are going to be around like a company refresh, and then you've got some problem, and what are you going to do in the systems? I didn't even ask here, but one that I'm going to ask is what kind of documentation do you think you need? If you're running in an environment that's doing stopgap measures to keep things running, and what does that mean? And then what is the term draconian measures? If somebody says that in a meeting, you don't want to have to go look on Google and figure out what it means to do draconian measures to your system. So I want you to know what that is up front, because engineers say that. And then another one is Unit 4 discussion post 2, talking about like security team and having an accurate inventory. Last week's discussion, we didn't have a good inventory. So this week's discussion is about, hey, you've gotten that going. Now what are you going to do to touch those systems every day? What are you going to do to make sure those look good? Some of you guys have been around our Discord long enough to know that every day we write out the sandbox and it tells you about the Prolog environment. In fact, I should probably update that, because there's some things that are not going on right now. So I really should go Here, let's go. Let's just modify that now. We'll go fix that live real quick before we get into the other stuff. Let's go to this box. Oh, oops, -L. And apparently this is where we're running it. So let's just CD into there, and then roles, and then prolog, bastion, and then in here it'll be template. Yeah. And then we'll just VR bastion. And oh, where is that? Oh, maybe that's not where I'm running it from. Apparently I'm running it from a different node. Let's see. Maybe it's over here. Apparently I don't know where I'm even running stuff from. It looks like it is here. Okay. So it's in the prolog daily check. All right. We're going to go here. We're going to go to roles, daily, prolog check, and then templates in here. And in here, okay. So we might take this out of here for now because that's not really, really true right now. Pentagonist, yeah, that's all true in the environment. Check. I'm going to put down here for tomorrow. I'll say check in the channel is prolog lab environment. Adding key get access. Yep, because then when you go to the prolog channel here, you guys haven't been here. Oh, geez, wonderful. Right here. Here's how you do it. To add access, you can just do !, add key, and then put your public key in there, and it'll push it up automatically to our system. So Fisherman put that together yesterday and finished that up. And okay, that's all good. So now I could run that to test it, but I'm not really too worried about it. It should just come up correctly the next time it runs. So it'll be tonight at approximately midnight for me. Different times for you guys that are around the thing. Oh, by the way, we have different groups that are always running. So one of the guys is running a Bash study group right now. You can see that right here in our events. We got all kinds of events for people that want to get in there and do this stuff. Hey, yeah, how's it going? I'll call you, I don't know how to say that. I'm just going to say Kai. Hopefully this stuff's kind of useful to you. We are putting together a course, and then I'm just showing you guys about Discord. If you don't use Discord, I mean, I get it. Some people don't like Discord. Some people are big Slack fans. I don't know anybody that's a Teams fan, but some people have to use Teams because of work. So I appreciate that people have different tools that they like to use, but I'm a big fan of Bash and also Discord, because I think Discord just has a good feel. Like, you can see what's going on, you can talk with people. You don't get a lot of problems communicating unless you have over like 60 people in a channel, and sometimes we do have hundreds of people in some of our channels when we're doing stuff. But again, everything around here is free, and you guys are welcome to do it. All right, so let's get out of here. I was doing that, but now here's the lab. So I got to write up the doing the lab portion of this if you were to just do it like in your own lab. So we're going to come down here and say this lab is designed as part of a larger set of instruction that is free. That is true. And then here's the link to it. So if anybody needed the book, here's the link. And then I think the guys have been adding more and more to the book as it kind of goes. I think they have syllabus, lab guide. Yeah, I think they're adding more to this as we go. Oh, here's the so here's the course. Well, where's the hold on. Linux automation course. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so they do have these things, and then they have the worksheet there. Okay, so what I'm doing for them is this next part, which is the they're gonna need this. So okay, let's come back over here. You have found yourself in a Bash shell. Sure, you're trying to better understand inventory so that you can run automations and by inputting values and giving them to the other part of your organization. Run this shell script and attempt to understand what it is doing. So here we execute the API call and see if we can read the data. So this one would run this, and over here we would say execute the API call and see if you can read the data. Execute the script. U3. And let's just say and see can read the data. And then here we will go ahead and drop this here and then say, so the command is this one. Right, it ran again, which is fine. Gonna drop this over here with no formatting. And then we do need to format it because everything in our lab is courier new if we're doing it as a command. Okay. And then the questions underneath that, right? For the purposes of this, what values are shown? And then the next one is, I think, or and the next one here is, what are we doing? What does the script look like in Bash? And actually, maybe it's easier to just, as we do this, I can grab a lot of this. I also have this in the back end where we could just pull this right out of the VS Code if we want to, where we originally wrote it. All right, change that over to Times New Roman. Whoops, nope, Courier New. There we go. Boom. That looks better. What tools or techniques were used? All right, so now what is the actual bash prompt doing? I know that's a little probably hard to read for you guys, but it's just doing a curl and throwing it into a file. That's this file right here. And then it's using JSON query JQ to grab the data out and parse it down in a way that's readable to us. Now, there's 3 fields, and I think I mentioned it here. I say, what do you notice about... Okay, so anyways, then the next part would be to kind of think about this. Could you make this call something else? Could you chop this up in some other way, right? And actually, I don't need to ask the same questions as that, because in the lab book, it's going to be a little different. I would say, could you modify this script to hit a different API endpoint and place the file in a different location, right? Because that's really, at the end of the day, the task that I want you to know how to do. If you look at this, right, and you just see a curl-o something and then some API endpoint, I mean, I might not know much, but I could probably change that to be something else, even if it broke. And I could probably change this to go somewhere else, even if I didn't know where it was going. So I think most of you, and I'm convinced of this as far as like being an educator for a long time, you really just have to see it work, and then you go, oh, I could change that. Yeah, okay. The curl is the command. The O is telling me where to go put it, and then, you know, the name of the file, and then whatever, here's all the data when I hit that endpoint if I wanted to see it, kind of like the raw data, right? Which we don't need to do right now, but I chose that as an endpoint for the lab, not because it directly relates to inventories. However, anything that you can pull out and look at could be used as an inventory of some type. But the main reason I did that is because I know that usgs.gov is always going to be up. That's an API endpoint that should always be available to see what the most recent and in order, we've got them in order, earthquake data are from around the world, right? And then the exact time over there of it. So there's 3 fields. What are the fields and that kind of stuff? And then we come down, and the next question is, can you run the CSV? Right, here's a CSV. And then could you carve up that CSV file? So actually, you know what? I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm not gonna use this because when I click in there, I have to do something else. Let's go over here. Here's the actual backend automation, and here's these steps. So I'm going to move this over here. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to say, okay, we got to here. We're not necessarily doing the lab right now. But then can you modify the script to do this endpoint? Okay, good. And then the next question is, can you or execute read the provided users.csv file, right? And then this would be, oh, you know what? Yeah, this will all be correct. Actually, I'm looking at this thinking, is this going to be correct? This will be correct because if you've done the first part, then you've moved the data into the right place. So yeah, so this will be correct. And let's go ahead and modify this because the first part is setting the lab up correctly. So if you clone everything down, it's up in Git, so you can clone it down and run it. So I keep putting on Times New Roman. Courier. There we go. Boom. So that's good. Then the next one is can you parse out the data for just the first and the third fields, right? And this is just, you're kind of doing exactly what the lab says to do. So that's this one. And the lab book is essentially for people who maybe, well, it's not necessarily people that don't want to do the Killer Coda lab, but it's for people that probably have their own systems and just want to download everything and put it on some system. Or if you're doing it in our environment, we have our own Prolog environment that you guys can jump into, and I've shown that enough. I think I don't need to show that right now for how to connect to that. And then maybe we ask down here. Let's go with body. What is the, could you parse out the first and second fields? Can you remove the header? Right, so these are simple tasks, I think, for some people, but for some people it might be good practice if you've never done it before. Regenerate the data for root users.csv, and that's going to look like this right here. So we've got a little script that'll generate it for you. Again, change this to Courier New and Control Y right there to make that Courier New as well. All right, there we go. So now, if you were to actually just see me do it here, I would go and regenerate that data, and then if we were to carve it up, it would be now a male at 63, a female. So the data that we have has male or female, their date of birth, their actual age calculated from that, and then where they're at. Now these are generated from an open API that what's it called? Who is that? I don't think I have it here, but oh yeah, Postman. Postman leaves this API out there, so you can use Postman to hit it. And this is their overview of how their API works. So if any of you ever want to get into API work, some people really like API and security, and then also the communication that's allowed. Some companies even have this concept of what we call API first. API first companies, Amazon, I know Amazon runs it, Amazon, and specifically in their AWS section. I don't know what other companies are like really pushing what we call API first, but it's an interesting methodology for companies. I can also tell you that not just using the term API first, the other way to think of it is what we call event driven. So if you guys have heard of like event driven organizations or event driven programming, a good place to start on that, if you say, Scott, where would I start on that, is serverless land. I think serverless land is one of the best places to go on event-driven architectures, and it's specific to AWS, true, but it also has one of my favorite things about it to show you guys is if you go look at like the example codes, right? If you go play with it, they will have all the deployments. So let's go look at like I think they have it under snippets. And then I say, okay, I'm going to use Terraform. Where's my? You should be able to say you want to use Terraform Terraform. Where is that? Maybe it's because I did snippets instead of, oh, excuse me, workflows. I'll just do workflows. Now, workflows will be, okay, I'm going to use Terraform to deploy up into the cloud, and I want to deploy some type of Internet of Things, if they have it. It doesn't look, maybe they don't have that one with this one. Let's go data processing. So I can do AWS batch with Lambda, and then I can go see what that deployment looks like in. So here you would pull it down, you can do a Terraform init and apply, and then you can go look at what that actual code's doing if you want. Which is, you know, kind of nice. Some of us, again, most of us probably, is if we want to be engineers or if we call ourselves engineers, we can look at the way somebody else did it and go, oh, okay, I can modify that. I can make that work the way that I want. So anyways, all right, let's get out of there. I was just showing you guys that to show you. All right, so this can regenerate the system as many times as we need for anybody that needs to do that. All right, so now this next one, so then we come here, and we're going to grab bash and that, and come down here and pop that off of there, and drop that, and change this as a name to Python. And I don't think my Python I didn't have a whole lot to do with Python, because Python I wouldn't really use much for this, but I mean, I guess anybody could use anything for anything. Let's clear the screen up and let's go look at this. By the way, these are all free on Killer Coda. If you guys have never used Killer Coda, I think it's like one of the best ways. Like if you told me, hey Scott, I know no Linux, but I want to be a Linux admin, I would tell you to go get your hands in Killer Coda, because you could literally, I mean, I've spent hundreds of hours on this site for years now, many years, and I've had tens of thousands of hours used by people that go in there and do the courses and stuff, and it's free. They've never charged anybody anything to get in a shell like this for an hour. Now you only get it for an hour, but if you're just typing commands and trying to understand the ebb and flow of like a, you know, and understand how like a bash syntax works, I just think that's king. Drop them in an environment, everything's the same, and then we go. So we use it a lot in like our admin courses and teaching you guys how that stuff works. Now, you know, not everybody's at the beginner level, but if you are a beginner, I think that's a good place to start. All right, anyways. So we run this, and we get a little deprecation warning. Some date time thing that we're doing doesn't need to be there. We probably can remove that. But we probably don't need that. But anyways, and then we can go look at the script and see what the script is doing to look at all of the responses. And then it looks like we're doing, we're using this for the time. Yeah, maybe we'll go modify this in the future and do this a different way. Maybe I'll have one of the guys do a pull request and fix that. One of my guys that uses more Python than I do. And then how do we print them all up to the screen? So can we run this, and can we see all the earthquakes via magnitude, where they're at, and their time? Sure, cool. Okay. So this one's going to be kind of like this. Let's just grab this and go here, right? We're going to change it to this, and then we're going to say, why is it trying to do that? We don't like that. We want this. No, damn it. There we go. Better. All right. So then we'll go here, here. What are you showing? Spec the file. Boom. All right. And I think that's an easier way to see kind of what we just did. And that'll be courier new. And that'll be control Y. And there we go. Boom. So now there's the Python execution part. And then the last one that we have to run is the Ansible. Now, Ansible's the main reason we're doing any of this, right? It's the other things that we do with Bash and Python are just to show you guys that there's other tools out there. But from an automation standpoint, I've built a lot of my, I'd say the last 12 years probably or so, I've been using Ansible, and I'd say the last 8 years I've been using it almost exclusively for almost everything I need to do as an admin and an engineer. Like I can build everything with it. I've shown you guys, like, we have a security engineering course that we look at how to harden systems via STIGs, and all of that hardening you can one-off it, but then after you get tired of one-offing it, you just do it all with Ansible. It's super easy. We just build everything and just makes it all work, and it's nice. Every system, just comes out the same way. So, but we're not doing that now. We are doing system work. All right. So, can you modify this? Can you generate some other? So maybe I come here, go back to here, and then just real quick ask. Just drop this here. Yeah, we'll go back to here. Okay. There you go. All right. Ansible time. So Ansible's last one. You decide to interact with Ansible inventories, execute some playbooks to see their functionality, use the tool Ansible-inventory to parse and understand your inventories. All right. So now we run this u3 underscore script.yaml. So now we're using YAML, right? And that's YAML or YML. It doesn't really matter. I find that the Ansible side of things, people tend to use YML, and over on like the Kubernetes side of things, they tend to use more YAML. Or maybe I have that backwards. I don't know. It doesn't really matter which one you use, right? What matters is that the format's correct. So let's go look at what you're doing in this one. So you're gonna run that. You're gonna run that. We're gonna grab all this stuff. Maybe we'll just go to here. And then we're going to drop them right here under Ansible execution. And we're going to strip all that off. All right. What did it do? First off, we don't want all that in curry or new. So let's switch to right here. Switch these all to calibrate body. Now let's come here and we'll fix it. So there. That's also its own. Inspect your current inventories. Whoops. These are all just questions. Whoops. We do want that one. All right, there we go. All right, so now we just got to go find the command. So everything here that would be a command, we're going to change into this. So query new, boom. These are control Y, and these are control Y as well. All right, so those are the things that you're doing in that lab. And that is essentially, that's all I need to do for that part of the lab book. Now, I meant to do that last week before Unit 3, because now we're starting Unit 4 today. So I'm kind of running behind. I got like plates falling forward, and I'm kind of trying to run and keep up with them. But let's make sure all these work still, right? That's always an important thing. You've decided to interact with Ansible inventories, execute some playbooks, and see their functionality. So let's run this. First one is this script.yaml. And what's it going to do? It's going to go and it's going to try to parse some information, tell us how many earthquakes there were, 167 in the last 24 hours, and it gives us some information about those earthquakes up here. And I say, what are you shown? Can you modify the output so that there's other interesting part of the API calls? If you had to pull a specific field, could you do it? Again, you don't know how the data might come in your organization, so this is an exercise in parsing things different ways. So you might need to know how to kind of parse through this information. So if you needed to do that, right, if you said, well, Scott, no, I don't know how to do that, well, then the command you just did, you would go and you would cat this file, right? So now catting the file, now you see the API call that we did. We used the URI module to hit that same exact API call that you did a few minutes ago with both Bash and Python. In Bash, you use curl. In Python, you used requests. But instead of requests, you could use something called URL lib3. That's a pretty common one. Sometimes you have to use that, like if you're using like Lambda environments up in AWS and you don't want to build your own environments and include requests, then you have to go use something like URL lib3. But honestly, I mean, like, okay, if you say, Scott, I don't know any Python. Well, I don't really consider myself to be that great at Python either, but I can do this. Watch, I can say lib3 request, watch, to usgs.gov. And if you do this, just drop that in your browser. I mean, the AI is going to try to write it for you. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, anymore nowadays, it's almost just like, you don't have to have some great thing. You need somebody to tell you, like, hey, this is kind of how this part of this works, you know? So, and then once you go, oh, it's URL lib3, that's super easy. Then you can just do that. And then again, there's not that many different ways to do this, right? Here they have the definition. Here's an HTTP and the URL. So here's our URL, and then it's going to try it, and it's going to give some exceptions if it fails. And then you go and work that into your code, whatever you want, right? All right, anyways. It's not what we're doing here necessarily. We're just looking at ways to build out automations. The things that we go and query and get information back from are the things that in my mind are interesting. The method that we do to get there, whether it be Bash or Python or Ansible, they're just a tool, right? It's no different than if I had a hammer. Like if I told you, hey guys, this is a framing hammer and that's a claw hammer, and you're like, I don't even see the difference. I'd be like, it doesn't matter, right? It's what I'm telling you guys is don't get bogged down in the tooling. The tool has to work. Yes, you have to get your tool to work correctly. But what I'm saying is you don't have to be like, I only do things in this language and I only do things in this way. You won't ever see me be an Ansible purist. I love Ansible. I think there's a very valid reason that there's a cult of people that use Ansible. And I joke oftenly about the cult of Ansible. And I joke often about getting people to join the cult of Ansible, but I don't really like ascribe to any one way to do things. I think there's more than one way to do it, which is an old Perl saying, right? We used to say Tim Towdy, Tim Towdi, and that is there is more than one way to do it. So that's an important concept. I mean, if you don't want to get bogged down, I mean, because I've seen engineers just fight over language, and you're like, oh my god, like, fucking, let's just write the thing. And by the way, some of you might think, oh, that sounds exactly like one of the tenets of Agile. Yeah, Agile is very much about getting the thing to work and then building back from a working prototype. So, anyways, that's neither here nor there. I'm not trying to start arguments with people. We could go look at our hosts file. So here's some different inventories. Right? Different ways to do inventories. And then I had in the discussion from last week, which actually is the back end of, oh no, it's not the back end of this. I thought it was I thought that's the one that I was using as the back end. Here is, so for last week, when we were talking about inventories, we were talking about like how inventories come into a system, what is a good inventory, and you don't want the fog of war. You don't want to be confused about things, right? That kind of stuff. You don't want to have blind spots that you can't execute and move against, right? Then we talked about what makes a good inventory, and then we looked at some inventories and we compared them and kind of talked about the values of them and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Agent, I'll tell you what, man. People, I used to tell engineers all the time, especially people that were getting into Linux, I'm like, you don't have to learn VI and you don't have to learn Vim, but engineers will judge you for not being able to use them. And it's terrible, but that's the way the world is, right? And then here's this week's stuff. So this is Unit 4 stuff. We talked about refresh cycles and stopgap measures, and then keeping an inventory updated and verifying servers. These are concepts here in our course discussion. Now, for people that do the courses with us, the courses are free, right? Like, I'm exactly one person's dad, but I always say, like, I'm none of your dads, right? I'm not going to tell you to do something. But if you want to do the course with us, you have to do the discussion posts, and you have to do 2 a week. And the discussions look like I ask some questions, you go down and you write up your response, and then you respond to one other person. And some people are like, well, I don't really want to, think, and I don't really want to type stuff in front of people. I understand that, right? That's very valid. Some people don't like being criticized for how they think or how they think through problems. But let me posit this. If you want to do this professionally, people are going to look at your work all the time. People are going to look at your pull requests all the time. People are going to Man, there's so many things that people are going to judge you on in your career. And I tell people all the time, like, and you might not believe me until you get in the industry, you can be the smartest engineer on planet Earth. If you can't write an email correctly, if you can't stop using the letter U when you mean the word YOU, and you can't stop using lowercase i's instead of just hitting shift and I, you might say, that grammar stuff, that's for all those people that wanted to go to college and this and this. Nope. I'm telling you right now, you can be the smartest engineer on planet Earth. Everybody's going to think you're an idiot. And it's a terrible thing, and it's like, maybe not the best way for us to rank our engineers. I'm just going to tell you that's the way it's going to be. And you might be, again, brilliant and doing all kinds of brilliant things, but nobody's going to know that. So it's almost this idea that I tell people, like, when you communicate, you have to use the medium by which you communicate. And I teach communications too, but that's not really the point of this talk. That's not really the point of even what I'm doing right now. I'm getting far afield. Where are we at? That was our worksheet. There's our that. Where's this? Okay. So we were doing I was building out the lab book. So we are at the end of this. So this part's good. I'm going to hit check, and then it'll tell us that the lab's done. Look at you learning automation. You interacted with different types of inventories for your automation. Okay, cool. So I could publish the book here, but it's not ready yet. So now the next part I have to do is I'm going to grab all this stuff up here at the top. And I'm going to grab about that much right there. And I'm going to... Oops, no, I need one more little bit right here, right? And this is going to come down and be the next part right here under lab 4. So I'm going to drop this in, and then we're going to I got to modify this, right? And then down here, we're going to modify this. This will be unit 4. And it'll still be the same. This will be unit 4. And we're going to call this admin commands. Just like that, admin commands. And all this will be the same, except that'll become a 1 again. There we go. Okay. Let's go build the admin commands lab. I gotta make it anyways, so come here. Now, this is where those names are coming from. So we're going to grab inventories here. We're going to copy it. We're going to drop it right here. And we're going to paste. Now, it's a 4. And we're going to name it exactly what we named it over there, which is admin underscore commands. Yeah. Just like that. Boom. Now inside of there, so inside of unit 4 admin commands, we're going to have all of these different things that we're touching, and let's get all this out of the way. And we're going to modify all of these to be the next part of this. So come down to index.json. We're going to change the name here. Admin commands. There we go. Oh, and you'll notice that my system's always trying to help me out, which I think is pretty funny. But we are going to probably keep some of these other things around for the rest of the time that we run the course. So basically the inventories are always going to be there for us to look at and use. And then we're going to keep adding and changing things. Let's see, what is that simple servers list? So that's just a simple servers list. So we can hit that anytime. That'll be good. That'll be useful in the labs in the future. I forgot that was even in there. So simple servers list. I don't even think we touched that in the last lab. So that'll be good. All right. We will modify our scripts, and we'll update our scripts for each, and then we'll modify the steps in the lab for each of the different things that we're kind of talking about. So that will be, what? No. Visual Studio, I swear. It's not a great tool, but I use it because one of my friends is a programmer that I respect in that space quite a bit. He was telling me, he's like, yeah, a lot of the guys use it. And I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot. Most of the time I used to just white knuckle everything down in VI and in some cases Vim, but it does make some of this stuff easier to maintain and modify, because it does have you know, color coding, and nowadays it's got all this AI stuff that's gonna always try to help you with stuff. And I'm like, I guess I don't hate it, right? I don't hate that stuff because some of that stuff does help some of the script generation to work a little better and get that stuff kind of going. By the way, in case anybody's wondering, we do have the security engineering course is starting in 3 hours, but I got that one all done because we've run through it. So I'm just getting stuff going for the automation course, which will be in 5 hours. But I lose one of those hours because I got to talk to the security engineers. So I'm kind of trying to get everything ready for the guys tonight. If I don't get everything ready by tonight, I want at least to have the presentation ready, so that then I can get the other stuff done, and then the guys will have the stuff to publish on Sunday, because we have a group that meets on Sundays, and those guys, they're called the writers room, and they work through the books, they build the books. So like all the books that we have that are free, which are where they at? Here. So we've got the Linux administration course, which is all this stuff free, everything on the left, all the labs, all the work. You can work them. You can start working on them now if you want. All the admin stuff's there free. All the security engineering stuff is free, and we're in Unit 4 this week of this one, which is bastions and air gaps. Maybe one of my favorite topics. In fact, so much of a favorite topic that that's what my dissertation's on for my doctorate. So my systems engineering is around bastion hosts and securing the ingress of users, right? Securing the, I want to almost say like the port authority of the system and how we do that. So does it cover Fedora? No, but it's Rocky and RHEL, which are, I mean, as close to Fedora as you can get. If you use Fedora and you like Fedora professionally, you will probably use RHEL or Rocky. And I guess Alma. Alma's out there. Alma deserves a what's it called? They deserve a nod their way because they're doing stuff. Okay. Man, I've been talking for 45 minutes almost. Yeah, absolutely. This last course, though, the one that I'm building. Whoops, where's he at? He is. I don't know where he is, but yeah, admin, security. Here's the Linux automation, and we're in the admin commands and one-off. So this week we're kind of starting it slow because I want to build stuff and work you guys up into the different skills and things that I think are necessary. And in each of these different weeks, we've talked about different things that are not quite automation but adjacent. Like we talked about Pareto's principle and painting with a wide brush and like being as correct as you can. But eventually you have to go. You can't just sit there and noodle on an automation forever for all edge cases and use cases. You simply can't do it. You eventually have to send it. You eventually have to, as the young people say, yeet it over the wall, and right, you have to kind of eventually, that's YEET. Anyways, it doesn't matter. You eventually have to launch it, right? And this is the thing that we talk about in systems world. So let's, what are we doing next? What are we doing? Yeah, yeet, right? Next part then would be this. Okay, so this is done. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna back out of here. And again, if anybody wants all of the stuff, all of the Het Tanis labs, right? These are maintained by me, but also the Professional Linux Users Group. I've had, over the years, we've had a lot of people get involved with updating these, right? It's an open repository. You can go to my GitHub by the same name, Het Tanis, and you can do pull requests and you can fix those labs if you find something broken, right? Maybe, I mean, I tell you guys, like anybody that needs just, you got nothing on your resume and you need something, you can at least have pull requests that you've done against some big repository that's, I wouldn't call it, I mean, that's not big, but I mean, it's something, right? And mostly they're Ansible and Linux labs, because that's most of what we do around here, right? But anyway, so we're in automation lab here, and we are going to build Unit 4. So Unit 4 is coming up here, and we are going to we're going to name this one off bash commands. Execute one off bash commands. Oh wow. I don't like what just happened there. It's like, wait a minute, why is it? Execute admin bash commands. Okay. I don't really do. Yeah, see, so it's trying to fix everything for me. I was telling somebody the other day, like, we didn't really do I want to use one off? It is still kind of one off. But anyways, we'll do that for now. That's fine. That's a fine thing for what we need now. But what I was telling somebody the other day is I never changed this. This just turned on one day. And then I was reading about it, and they were like, yeah, if you just use the normal little whatever, I think they're calling it Copilot or whatever inside of VS Code, and I might be wrong on that name. Copilot might be some specific other one, and I might be using it wrong. I don't know. But it's basically like a little, buddy team, what they call vibe coding type thing. And and I was reading about it, and I guess in VS Code you get 3,000 of these a day, where where you take it, and it does like 3,000 of those a day for free. And I'm like, I've never even come close to the limit because I hardly ever do anything in there. Most of the stuff I do for Noah, I still just do over on this other system, which actually I need to make sure I'm logged in on because I am the on-call. Let me make sure I'm logged in over here. Got to keep the weather running. Got to keep the weather running. That's what I do with Noah, and that's NOAA, National Oceanographic Atmospheric Agency. Right? Got to keep the weather running. I'm just kidding. I don't keep the weather running. I keep the maintain. Yeah, I do run. Yeah, I'm a contractor. I'm a subcontractor for a contract that my company. We won the secondary. So like. The big contractor is GDIT, General Dynamics IT. They won the contract, and we won as the sub underneath them. So we have like a certain number of seats on it. And then I just work on that project. Yeah, and it's interesting because it's a big aging system that was to exist for about 10 years, and we're about 6 years in. So it's getting on the back end of kind of in its twilight of its life. But it's a pretty beefy system, and then we're getting to the next year's worth of deployment going forward and stuff. So, yeah, that's what I do. But yeah, 3,000 is the number of calls that I believe I have for free in there. Because they're like, yeah, there's a free tier, and then there's a buy. I probably can go and find where I could buy it, and it would probably tell me what all the licenses are. So, but I've never dug into that. I just know that it started coming up for free and never charged me anything. So I'm like. Which I think is actually funny because I have this from PowerPoint, right? So if any of you guys are wondering how I do my closed captioning, it's all with PowerPoint. And I've always wondered, like, well, who pays for that? Because it's going out to Azure. It's definitely going to the cloud. And you say, how do you know that? Well, because if I'm having networking problems, this will stop working. That's one. And two, I think it's doing something. I think it's logged in with my college account. And I don't know why that matters. And I don't know why it does that, but I think it does. And I'm like, well... They shouldn't have turned it on if they didn't want me using it. Because who knows? I might just be sitting here talking to myself all day and it could just be running up. I don't know. But anyways, we won't worry about that. Let's come over here. Let's make sure we have all the environment the way we want. Looks good. We need to make sure that the intro looks good. Welcome to Prolog Automation. Let's make sure that the foreground is installing the environment, and the finish says, look at you learning automation. You interacted with different types of inventories. Nope. You interacted. You wrote different administrative. You executed different administrative and one-off commands for different automation tools. Okay. All right. Control S. Boom. And this one can also be saved. Now we're going to end up modifying all of these, right? We're going to change them to the right inventories. And these we typically end up, I'll probably just rename them to 4. Although script generator doesn't really need to change. In fact, we don't even really need him anymore, so maybe we just delete him on this one. Go ahead and delete him here. That's fine. Get out of there. And then these guys will update, but sometimes we use multiple. It's not always just script Pi. It might be script 1 and script 2. And then we have Python, Shell, and YAML, which is, run for Ansible. All right. Where are we at here? Let's... So I need to plan for what kind of admin and one-off commands I want. Now I have I think over here I had... Oh yeah, I do have... Okay, so I have some ideas for the different types of commands and kind of maybe one-off things that people might need. Now, a thing about it, right? And oh, by the way, in Ansible, we tend to call those types of commands ad hoc. Oh, let me add that to here, because ad hoc is another way to think of this. I need to add that in over here. One-off admin ad hoc. And what that is it's not that it's wrong, right? It's not wrong to do, like, okay, so you're adminning a bunch of servers, and somebody sends in a work order, and they say, hey, these servers didn't get built right. Can you just fix them real quick for us? That's not necessarily wrong to do, right? Like you got, I mean, you get a request in from a manager, and there's 15 devs sitting there ready to go, and your company's paying them. It's a sunk cost. You've already paid them, or you're already paying them. They're your employees. And they're just sitting there on their hands not doing any work because they can't get into a dev environment. Yeah, you should probably just get that working. Now, some people are going to be purists and be like, I can't do that. I can't deploy it that way. I need to step back and redeploy the whole system correctly. And it's like, that rework might take weeks. It might only take a few minutes depending on how close you were to the process. But the point is, we need to get these people working now, right? And that's a thing that's often, like, there's this trade-off in engineering that we don't always get to do the perfectly clean thing when we're trying to keep a system running. Does that make sense? Like I tell you guys all the time, uptime is the #1 driver of a system. Uptime is first, security is a very close second, mainly because security can affect uptime, and then security can also affect the ability to continue working. So like security is very important, but uptime, like if somebody said, what's the most important thing for a vehicle working, I'd say the engine. And then you say, well, can you go 70 miles an hour with a working engine? Yeah, but not without brakes. If I don't have brakes to slow me down, I can't go 70 miles an hour. I have to go like 5 miles an hour and then hope that I don't run into something still, right? I'm doing like this with my tires to slow down. Like that's the only thing I can think about. But anyways, yeah, ad hoc commands are one-off. I don't even know where I was going with that. I'm kind of like hyper right now. So, all right, let's get back to here. So let's go modify these. This bot's gonna try to fix everything for us, and then let's go rename all these to 4 for now, and then 4 for now. Whoops. And then of course it's gonna move them on me. Wonderful. Oh, rename. Boom, 4. All right. And actually, it's funny, the scripts aren't really that important because the commands will actually just be one-off commands at the command line. So that's probably, I guess, less interesting. We might not even end up using those. We'll definitely use them, I think, on the Ansible one. Yeah, because the Ansible one we might use to maybe like set up an environment. Maybe we like push MySQL over there or something, like MariaDB. And then after we have MariaDB on the box, maybe we have to do like a little one-off fix, right? Just a quick little fix. And then you might say, well, Scott, so I did this ad hoc Ansible command and then I have this deployer. Do I need to go push it back to the deployer? Well, naturally, yes. You then have to go spend the time as an engineer and rework your build process. But an ad hoc one-off command is not some like I even said this early on in the course for people, like it's not some dirty thing. People think like everything always has to be like, we sit down, we tuck in our little napkin and we do our perfect engineering. That's a wonderful thing. I mean, I guess if you live in like some fantasy world, but that's not how engineering really works. engineers have to keep their systems running, and it's dirty and messy. Think about it, if you guys have ever heard like mechanics or seen mechanics complain about like where an oil filter is or something like that, and they're like, this guy's never had to work on one of these, he just built it. Well, yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, business continuity is a huge thing, Agent. Yeah, I'm helping a company right now get SOC 2 compliant and ISO 27001 compliant. And one of the things that I had them just spin off, so I meet with them every 2 weeks and I give them more tasks for their guys to do. And one of the things I just did in the last one was I explained to them the difference between a disaster recovery plan, a business continuity plan, and a business impact analysis. And then I kind of flipped it around and said, okay, we've got to do the business impact analysis first against any processes that we have. Then from there, from once we know like what business processes would an impact would be if they went down, then we can have a business continuity plan around how quickly we get them back up, who we inform, what the breach, all these notifications, recovery point objective, recovery time objectives, all these things. And then from there we can go to DR, which is disaster recovery planning from that. But we have to start with business impact because everything goes back to the business 100%. Isn't this like GRC? Yeah, so GRC is like governance, risk, and compliance typically. And for me, GRC has always been, they're the guys that are like driving work to me. The governance, risk, and compliance team are looking at the configs of things that I've built, and they're ensuring that they are standards, within the standards that we've defined. Most of the time, it's either CIS benchmarks, right? CIS benchmarks are a good one, or STIG. I almost always nowadays with government systems do STIG compliance. And if anybody's like, well, what's a STIG? And that sounds interesting, I would tell you guys to go here and go to the security engineering course, which again is free, and go look around at like how we do STIGs, right? So like STIG compliance and that kind of stuff. That's what I think of as governance, risk, and compliance teams, GRC. And they tend to be, when I interact with them, it tends to be through checklists out of a STIG viewer, right? STIG viewer, and I do checklists. And then the people that I tend to interact with that are governance, risk, and compliance are information system security officers, or ISSOs. If you deal with ISSOs, the one thing that'll always be there, it's actually funny. If you ever talk to an ISO from a government, the ISSOs, they always are CISSPs. Always. It's always after their name. It's like a funny thing with them. So like when I email them, I always include my CISSP, but like never any other time. Like I don't normally like send that out to people or anything. I don't mind telling people I have one, but I don't make it like a big thing unless I'm talking to ISOs, because that's like a thing for them to know if you're in their club or not, which I think is hilarious. But all right, I was doing something over here. Yeah, so we've got our scripts right. We'll wipe these and start them over, but really we need to think about what we're going to do inside of we've got our server lists, and we've got our different users if we need them. I chose to leave these in case we ever needed them. Yeah, so let's run. Let's make some scenarios that look like some of the things from our talk this week. So our talk this week is here, and I talk specifically about when admin commands and one-off commands are going to happen, right? So a system event occurs, some server stops responding, the service is unavailable, there's no ping, there's no console or power access. Maybe you have logs or events or event-driven programming. Users can send in requests that trigger things. So any of these things will be good for us to use, as a part of this. I thought about having us do, I probably won't do it this week, but maybe in the coming weeks, we're going to do some event-driven stuff with Kafka for sure, because the Kafka setup's pretty straightforward, and I'll have that in the environment as well. But that'll only be up in the Killer Coda one for sure. Hey, Outcast Wanderer, how's it going? I'm not working super hard. Well, I'm kind of working hard actually, but I'm building the next stuff for the Unit 4 of the automation course, yeah. And I am like I'd say I'm like 90% done with the worksheet. So So here's the worksheet, right? And the discussion questions are already up in the Discord for people doing that. So that's already up there. Terminology is pretty good. Links, I need to include the link to this lab. So the lab will be there. And then I like to write at least one digging deeper. Those aren't required, but they're things for you to like kind of go and spend more time with this stuff if it's interesting to you. I always have the same 2 reflection questions. Sometimes I write another one, but it's like, what questions do you still have about the week? And then how are you going to use what you've learned in your current role? And digging deeper tends to look something like this. In fact, I got a good one here. I might go here and say ad hoc Ansible commands, right? And then over here, here's our introduction to ad hoc commands. And then, you know, one of my digging deeper would be read this web page, or read this article. And then I would say something like, what tasks, what did you learn? So I almost always do things like this with my college students as well. But what did you learn about this that you didn't know? So what new thing is there? And then I might say, how are you going to use this in your current or future automations? And then maybe, you know, just gathering facts. I might say, let's see, what's something here? Yeah, those are the main 2 questions. What did you learn about this that you didn't know? How are you going to use it? Because I really think that, like, if you're trying to learn something, right? If you tell me, Scott, hey, I'm terrible at learning things, and I say, well, how do you do it? And you say, well, I sit down and I read about stuff, and then it never works. And I can't stick it in my brain. And I'm like, well, I bet you can stick it in your brain. You'd probably just have to think about it in context of maybe, you know, because maybe you know systems already, but you're trying to learn this other tool. And I would say, well, what did you learn about it that's new? Like, what was something interesting? And interesting things tend to stick in your mind. But also, if you start to think about how you're going to deploy something, and it's almost like, in my mind, it's almost like you're spackling it onto some other piece of memory. So you have like this low wall, and then you're like throwing some spackle on it and making it a little bit bigger wall, and it's like more information. We have this problem. So I do this sport called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Some of you guys know that. And we have this problem where people are like, Scott, there's all this stuff and I don't learn it. I don't remember it. And I go, well, what do you do well? Like when you wrestle or when you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, what do you do well? And they'll tell me, okay, I get stuck in half guard, this and this. All right, why don't we go to that half guard and stick this sweep on there and this like what we call like a mat return there. So we teach that, right? And then now they start going, well, Scott, I'm remembering all this stuff you're showing me, and I'm like, that's not really what's happening. What's happening is you're getting those positions over and over again, and then you're doing the things that I showed you, and you think it's magic, but it's really just a continuation of what you were already doing. If that kind of makes sense. Like if I just pulled out, you know, some microbiology book and started talking about it, most of us would be like, me included, would be like, what the fuck is all this? I don't do anything with this. But if you're already doing systems work and you're already opening files and you're already like doing this other stuff, and then somebody says switch context and do it a little bit different way, or add this technique on there, most of you can do that. And that's I mean, really at the end of the day, that's all we're doing with this course is like, a lot of the guys are already in systems. Most of them are already doing stuff with Bash. Now we're just thinking about it in the context of like, how do we, you know, do it for an enterprise? How do we make our lives easier? Because I really, my whole career has been around making my life easier as an engineer, right? I do stuff well. I sit around and watch Netflix while my little automations run on deployments and stuff like that. And people always think I'm kidding, but it's not false. I have spent tens of thousands of hours in my career watching automations run late at night, right? On nights and weekends and stuff, sure, during patch windows. But I'm doing whatever I want while the stuff's doing, because I know that it should work correctly. And sometimes we got to go fix them, right? But that's going to be the last 2 weeks of the course. Last 2 weeks of the course, we're going to troubleshoot broken crap all over the place, because sometimes stuff does crap all over the place, and sometimes you have to fix it. The term is often shitting the bed, which I think is hilarious, right? But that's often the term. Well, pooping the bed. Will it say pooping the bed? There you go. My thing won't swear. It's actually kind of funny. All right. Anyways, let's just leave it at that. Read this article. What did you learn? Read this article about Ansible ad hoc. Boom. There you go. And then, yep, there we go. So, we got all this. By the way, some of you guys were around last night, and I was telling this earlier. Whenever I find something, like, because I almost always find stuff exactly the second I get off a stream. As soon as I got off a stream last night, so if any of you were watching me fumble around trying to get that Samba to work on my new box, it's right here in the meeting notes what it was. Pissed me off a lot. It was, I needed to set the Samba password. As soon as I did that, my system connected right in. So now, like my home lab, I have now switched off of the older Hostbox server over to Hostbox 2 in my environment. In fact, I actually have to take my wife's laptop is right over there. I'm going to put her on the new one as well, so then she can get access to all my stuff. So she's like, well, how do I get access to your pictures and stuff? And I'm like, you can get into all my stuff in the environment if you need. Wow. My whole system is resetting, so hopefully you guys can hear me. I mean, sure, Chrome. Apparently everything in my environment just crashed, so I don't even know if I'm talking to people anymore. I don't have any idea what's going on anymore. I literally have no idea if I'm even talking to you guys anymore. So, all right. You're still here? Okay, good. I was sure I was gone because like everything in Chrome just crashed. So, looks like YouTube's still up too. So hopefully YouTube's up. You guys are still here. Oh, Schizophrenic, the new server is great. You want to check it out? Here, hold on. So for people that weren't here the last couple nights, so it popped up. Where's this? Oh yeah, got the wrong Slack in the wrong places. Right, that's no good. Let's pull up the actual. So here's the Proxmox server that we built out, and what we were doing last night with it. Really, that's what's gonna happen. All right. So here's Proxmox server. He's pretty beefy, man. Like I'm pretty happy with him. Now it's super funny that like CPU usage, you would think like, oh, that's really high, but that's not even 1%. So we need to get this graph to be so that it just shows that we're not using any of it yet. But we've got one server that exists in there, and he's the real new Hostbox 2, and he's the real server that's doing real server things. In my environment, in that he's a Samba server and an NFS ISO server. Those are the two things that he does. But the server himself, yeah, the Proxmox server, he's pretty beefy. He's got 500, well, he's just under 512 gigs of RAM. He's 80, oh my God. He is 80 cores, so it's in 80 cores. And he's got like about 3 terabytes of extra lab storage here, which are mostly being used. This is like my home backup right here. So everything else is going to exist in this space. And then what we ended up doing last night was we were writing, again, we were just messing around in here. We made a deploy test and just made sure that we could deploy a node in there. And we could, so that's very good. And then all of these values here come from our vault, which you could only launch my vault if you know the password, right? So there's a couple ways I can build those automations that'll keep that password somewhat secure. But we can also, if we want, to move it up towards like an AWX, which I have an old version of AWX in my environment. But maybe I need to move to like one of the newer ones because I know there's still AWX out there that we could use. But we're moving away from this. So for people that haven't been around, here's my XCP-ng environment, and nodes are always up. And then with Werewolf, they're cut down and brought back up as needed. They're stateless nodes. And I still kind of want to do that. I'm still going to use Werewolf to do my deploys. But what if these nodes only had to exist while somebody wanted to use them? So you jump into the Bastion, you wait there for 30 seconds while we stand up your environment, and then you move into your environment. and that's kind of where I'm going with it. So that's kind of the plan. Oh, and also Schizophrenic, have you seen what I don't know if you were around down in the Discord, but did you guys all see what Fisherman built yesterday? So Fisherman's one of our mods. He works at one of the big cloud providers out there in the world, and he built out. If you go in here and you type in !add key and then you put in your public key, never your private key, guys, always your public key. It will update your key in that file, and then you can get access through Prolog at prologasuscom.com, and then you'll have access into the servers, and you can do all of the stuff that you need to in our lab environment. So, and then yeah, it looks like we have good capacity right now. Let's go look at the capacity of these servers. Yeah, we could look at it like this because this is auto generated. So here's the capacity in the environment. There's only Rocky 2, so people are on the Rocky servers. That's good. Only the Hammer servers, so hardly anybody's doing anything inside of the security environment, and then only one person's using the automation environment. So these go away as they're being used, and if there's none available, then we just say there's no capacity right now. But if I look here, yeah, people are logged in right now. So these are users logged in to the different environments. So there you go. Boom. If you guys didn't know, you can get into our environment and do any reasonable thing that you need in there for systems work. But anyways, to the actual question, I don't have any other... I mean, I just have to start building out my processes that deploy in here. I need to plan it because it's going to be based on VLANs, and it's going to be some other stuff. So I have a little bit of planning to do and drawing out. The old hardware, I am going to probably... This guy is going to go into that final good sleep, that final good night. He's dying. He's an old box. This server, he's running still our primary internal nodes, and he was running the original host box, which is my backup. So this box is going to be going away. We're going to be decommissioning him out of the environment. He will probably just get all his disks removed, and he'll probably just be gone. These other ones, I'm going to slowly start moving out, because, again, this one server can handle pretty much what all these other ones can do. But I was talking to the wife. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll figure out some way to... if people need home lab stuff. But you got to remember, I have a full server rack, so that's not exactly going to be what anybody else would want. That's completely in addition right now, Schizophrenic. But I will probably take these other ones, and I mean, we can use them for stuff, but they are kind of aging. They are getting older and older as we go. So, you know, we'll figure out what we're going to do with them. But yeah, all this lab capacity back here is less from the CPU and... well, not from the CPU perspective, but from the RAM perspective, it's less, and from the CPU perspective, it's about the same. So yeah, it's that. Yeah. Oh, Agent over on YouTube said we're still up. Good. I appreciate that, because I was really worried about not having. I thought my system was crashing all over the place. So that was just a weird restart of Chrome. That was just Chrome being an asshole. So let's go here. Let's get this out of the way. Let's go look at... Let's see if I can keep writing. All right. So the lab... This is all done with the exception of I just need to put the lab right here. And the lab name, we're going to know here in a minute when I push that. Well, I mean, I guess I could generate the lab name. I know what it should be. It'll be unit 4, and then its name right here. Let's get this part going out of here. Let's go here. Execute your automation tools to what was that thing trying to say? Like, just get the fuck out of the way. Run one off in administrative commands. It's perfect. Perfect description. And there we go. Okay, intro, foreground, execute That's all good. We looked at all these. That looks correct. Make sure Ansible's there. That's correct. Finish. We did all that. Okay. We need to add here in the structure. We need to add this one now, which is path. Well, mostly copy, right? And the path is going to be unit 4, and the command is going to be admin commands. Oops. It does matter if it's upper and lowercase correctly. Okay. And there we go. So unit 4, admin commands. Boom. Hit Control S, and then that will now be correct, and then we'll be able to push that into our system, and then we can start to write them. So I don't ever write them until we have enough of the stuff, or I don't publish them rather until we have enough of the stuff for me to kind of start going through and testing. So that's going to be our next part, is going to be writing these for what are we actually doing in the environment for Bash, like Bash one-off and admin commands. What do those kind of look like? And then also the yeah, and yeah, I think that's pretty good. I think that's a pretty good little start there for us. All right, so let me pull up the, go back over here. Lab, Killer Coda Lab. We'll put the lab right there too, so we know what that is. Okay, and then we'll have to go pull that down. Once we have that pushed up to Git, we'll pull it down into our environment and we'll update that part. So that'll be good. And then host example, simple servers list. I think those are all good. Yeah, really, we just got to get this next part. We just got to start writing it. But before we do that, I'm going to take a break real quick. So let's turn off my camera. Let's put on our little hourglass. If you guys have any questions, obviously let me know here. You can always ask questions up in the Discord as well. We'll just say quick break. And we'll do 8 minutes. So take a quick break, walk around, stretch your legs, do whatever. And we'll be back. We'll keep working on stuff. All right, we're back. Take a quick break. sit here and eat this little balance break thing the wife got for me. But I'm here if you guys have questions or want to talk about any of this stuff. I look down, I only have, 2 hours now. It's like my time just keeps slipping away. 2 hours before the security engineering course, and then an hour after that, automation. Let's push this up. Say that we added lab 4. That's going to allow us to put the numbers to this. If you guys ever look at this, maybe it's only on the creator side. I can see the last time that's been pushed to. Right here. So it's taken that change. Automation Lab now has Lab 4. Now it's not written. It's not written, but it does have the right number for it. So let's go add that to our docs. So that part's correct. That part won't change yet. Here. That's correct. Okay. And then save that. Where's our other one? Here. Good. So the worksheet is done. So what I always do with the worksheet, check them real quick. Still got a minute of break left. So I'm kind of working through my break now. Which is fine because I'm just sitting here eating, cranberries and almonds and then cheese while I'm hanging out. Good. All right. So we save this file, save as. In that location, we're going to change it to also be a PDF because the guys prefer PDFs, I believe. So now we go back up one, out of Prolog presentations. Drop in the sysadmin course. Let's get out of there. And, oh, not sysadmin, systems automation. Here's 4. And there's the PDF. So now I could drop that in the Discord right now, but we're not ready just yet. Got a few other things to do. Also, I'll turn the camera on in a minute. I'm just still eating. I don't think anybody wants to see that. All right. All right. I have 3, 4. All right. Call that done. Now I need to, let's go see. Let's check out this. So this week for Unit 4, got to update the date to the 18th. Because that's today. That's today, right? Yep. There we go. Wait, what did I miss? Oh yeah, yeah. Twitch is always, and also everybody's down in San Diego right now for TwitchCon, right? So there's probably a lot of live stuff. Yeah, I've had a few drop off on me actually. Now that I mentioned that, now that you mentioned that, Agent, yeah, I've had some stuff get weird. Okay. So, oh, this is our fourth. If we had announcements or reschedules, they'd go there. We don't have any. Last week, we talked about what is an inventory and inventory management systems. And our goal was to maintain inventories for systems for automation. And that is objective 3 of the course. I'm going to start including the objective numbers because I think that's useful for people. You know, when we're done with the course, we want to be able to look back and say, did Scott show us, right? Let me pull this up. When you do a course, right, and this is true of all syllabus, right? So I make syllabus for these. Here's the syllabus. This is the exact thing we're doing. Mother effer. In this course, this is the exact thing we're doing. And I want at the end for people to be able to say yes, whether I understood them or not. Scott did talk about these things. Like this was the first week. This was the third week. So this was the first and the second week. Now we've been doing API calls throughout, but we haven't really like focused in on them yet, but we're going to be doing that more in the future. But then we are doing environment variables next week heavily, and then we're just going to keep adding to these things as we go. Now we've been using variables the whole time. We haven't been focusing on them though. Where they can be, where we can get them from, that kind of stuff. So, all right, I'm all done eating, so now I can go back here. All right, you guys can see me again. So we've got this. I don't want to do whatever just happened there. Fourth class meeting. Okay. Inventory. Last week was inventory management. Yep. And then these were the review from last week. So I like to review things because I think it's good to see what's the importance of having good inventory, all that stuff. Just to like, you did it the last week and then you thought about it during the week and then we kind of go over it again to give us a little more solid understanding. We talked about inventories, where they come from. Inventories can be input into our automations in many ways. We can do API calls against them. We can get environment files from teams. We can read environment files from locations that we've agreed upon with teams. So maybe a team says, hey, when you kick off that build every time, you'll always grab this file so they'll have old versions of environments maybe, and it'll always be like the .current, or it'll be in that environment and it'll always be .something, and that'll always be the newest one. Or maybe it'll be like, hey, always grab the last one based on time and do that for your build. Your organization between you can determine all kinds of ways to do what we call like pulling from an artifact, right? So maybe the directory only has the one file and all the other ones are just going off to some archive or something. That could be the easiest way to deconflict it. But it just, different people have different workflows. Different things are going to flow out of these, environments different ways. Some people, like me, I like to deliver everything I do. Like if you're making me like deliver a payload to a set of servers, I like to deliver everything as a tar.gz file. So it's a gzipped tar file, tar.gz. Why? Because then it's always exactly the same thing. I can weigh it. I can weigh it and find out that the package that I did on this server is exactly the package I pushed over that server. I unpackage it, right? Gzip or bzip, whichever you're using. You're probably using gzip. Gzip has it zipped down. It unzips it. Then you extract it with tar, which just opens up the... Tar is not a compressor. A lot of people don't know that. All tar would be like if I had a bunch of loose paper sitting on top of my notebook, and I just went like this, and I carried this somewhere else, and then I reopened it. That's all tar does. Tar doesn't do by itself any type of compression. All it does is store structure. It keeps the directory structure underneath whatever you're doing. That's all tar is doing, right? It just takes it all and turns it into one file, like you're closing a briefcase and walking somewhere. Now, I know we don't use briefcases anymore, but people that used to, they would have all their files in it, and then they would close it, and then they would open it where they were going, and it would have all their stuff in it. So anyways, so that kind of idea. How are you going to get the environment files in? And then inventories must be maintainable. You have to be able to read them. If you can't read your inventory, it might look great, and it might parse into a system, but you're not going to be able to maintain it in any way, right? That's exactly what it does. Yeah, that's the purpose of tar. Yeah, it's to archive things as a single file, but essentially, it's like if you guys have ever seen, if you've ever been in a medical office where they used to have those doors that would like close, and it would close the whole shelf down. That's kind of what it's like. It's closing a briefcase, moving it somewhere else, and then opening it again. That's what it's doing. Anyway, so the importance of a good inventory. You can't interact with what you don't know about. You can't react to problems of things you don't see. You can't secure what you don't know about. That's true. And the fog of war is like this idea that like I know where the major structures are, but I don't know where the pieces are moving. And fog of war is a concept from a lot of video games. I grabbed this image off the internet and I just threw fog of war on it so that you guys could see like it's the things that we can't see that are always going to bite us in an environment. And last week we had some questions around like security engineer comes and he's got a different inventory than you do. Oh, that's a problem, right? I actually mentioned in the chat we were discussing, I worked for a company where we had about 5,000 servers. We had about 1,500 Linux boxes and 3,500 Windows machines. And before I was the platform engineering lead, because I was eventually the platform lead over all of that for engineering, but before that I was just I was like the Linux team lead and had 1,500 servers. We got a call one day about some servers in the environment that we had never heard of. Come to find out, the digital marketing team for our company, so like our marketing team, they had been building stuff up in AWS. They got tired of waiting for us and doing all this and this and this, and they had about 500 servers by the time we caught what's called shadow IT. So we had the shadow IT built up in our environment. And you say, how are they paying for it? One of the execs had a credit card and they were paying for it on a corporate credit card. It was for corporate reasons. They were real valid things. They had no oversight. There was no control in our organization. They were gonna, if they lost customer data, if they did something that they weren't supposed to, it was never gonna be able to be fixed or come down on our team. So we had to rein that back in and stop them from doing that. That's not the way that you run that stuff in an environment. So, or that's not the way that a company can't do that because the liabilities are too high in these areas that are not being controlled. So, all right. Anyway, so what makes good inventory? We'll talk about that. And then we look at some of the inventories like we did last week. And then we have a review. And then we talk about this week is refreshment. So refreshing cycles or refresh cycles are the ways that we get new hardware into an environment. You don't tend to have to deal with that if you're doing cloud stuff, right? You don't really have refresh. Although you do have to cycle off of like old versions of Lambda. I get emails all the time because I've got some old Python stuff up in Lambda that AWS reminds me, hey, we're going away from this older environment. We got to keep an inventory updated and verifying servers. So this continues on the question from the week before. And then here's our course objectives for this week, right? And you might say maintain system configuration and remediate drift. Yeah, that's kind of touched on in the stuff that we're going to do. We're going to make sure that things are configured the way that we expect them to. And then the overview, I've got more to add here. And then like admin commands, what are they doing? We go like this. Yeah, that's probably fine right there. So what are admin commands? What do they look like? And then what triggers admin commands in an environment? Like what makes you do stuff? And then I got more to add there. Okay. By the way, wife just texted me, so I gotta check that real quick. Hold on. Okay. Sorry. I had to check that from the wife. All right. Let's make sure this lab at least starts. We do have a lot to modify on it, but admin commands. Design is part of a large set of instruction. Good, good, good. Okay, so then we've got all of this stuff to add and write for this. All right. Go back here. And we're over here in the lab. All right. How are we going to do this? So let's move this over here. We'll write this way as we do it. Because I would like to get this one done for sure. I've almost always this course owed the guys by the time that we get around to 5 o'clock my time, so 4 hours from now. I've always this course owed the guys the labs. I'd really like to have them done this week, so I might drop off of here in a few and focus on them. But real quick, let me give you guys a little spiel. You know, obviously across the bottom it tells you guys about our Discord. We've got a Discord. It's got almost 4,300 people in it now, where you can go in there and you can talk about. You know, we got tech stuff that you can talk about. You got general stuff that's around technology, but not directly on any of these major topics. All Linux, right? We do Linux around here. Then there's the off-topic stuff. People talk about stuff. We've got our resources where we run courses, and we have presentations from old people that have come by and talked to us about all kinds of stuff over the years. I've had a lot of guest speakers, right? And then we've got like the writer's room and things that you might want to get involved with. There's also, sometimes you'll find in here people down there doing different events and stuff. You're always welcome to join in those. Now, if you've never been on Discord, Discord does have events now. So the next thing coming up is in 2 hours. We've got a security engineering group. This is going to be Unit 4, and we're going to be doing bastions and just building out bastions and talking about air gaps and jailing users. So if you've never done any of that stuff, come on in there. Unit 5, this is what I've been building stuff for. Unit 5. Unit 4 of the automation course is coming up. And this is a 16-week course on Linux administration and engineering, but trying to automate it, right? Which is kind of what I've done a lot of my career. And then we got study groups and writer's room and all these different things that you can do. And I need to actually message this guy, but James is going to come and talk to you guys about being in IT and getting into some of the AI stuff they're doing. And he specifically works, he's an IT director of optimization. He's one of my former college students, and he's working in healthcare and using AI to improve the speed of care. So he's going to talk to you guys about that a little bit. I have some questions to send him. I have these like generic questions for our guests, just like, where'd you go in your career? Did you see yourself doing this? And a lot of that answer is no, because I was talking to him last weekend, or 2 weekends ago. Me and the wife were up in Montana, and we were hanging out with him and his brother. But I've known James for, oh gosh, the better part of 15 years, but I've known him his entire IT career, because I was there. I was his college professor before he got into IT. So he is now an IT director of optimization, and he's going to come and talk to you guys about that, which I think is awesome. So, and then there's just different stuff going on, different stuff to keep up on and track, and we try to keep each other motivated in there and that kind of stuff. So, all right, I'll probably drop off of here because the wife did say she was coming home. Maybe she's getting food. I'm not sure. But yeah, let's plan for, I'll be on here later, and then typically tomorrow, so for Sunday mornings, we do labs, or we do a heavy amount of, in this case, I'm going to be recording Unit 4. So whatever we talk about today, whatever the official Unit 4 is, and then whatever I fix up tonight, that will be what we record on Sunday morning. So then you'll have that, all the old ones, if you wanted to catch up on automation, all of the old versions of those are recorded as well. And then again, Unit 4 is coming up. So, all right. That being said, I'll probably drop off of here. I definitely appreciate you guys coming by, sticking around with me while I do whatever shenanigans and other things I do. And I will see some of you guys later on, probably even tomorrow.